memorization or the idea of passing a test. And in a way that kind of backfired on me. I got so anti-test after my years at school. I really didn't do well on tests, and I would just say, well, the question is wrong. I know the answer. When I got to college, I really did have that attitude, because you could see what they wanted you to say, but I would say, well, you know, if you had a multiple choice, none of the above. And if you want me to tell you what the real answer is, I can. So I didn't, you know, those kind of things are not very
conducive to good grades.
No, I didn't get very good grades for that kind of stuff. My IQ probably measured about 20 or something. But if they had sat me down and asked the questions, they could have found out that I was not unintelligent.
Marietta Johnson used to say to Kenny and me in her late years, this, and I guess it's actually in her writings, this philosophy, which I feel so strongly is the way that education must go, will not be totally successful until the colleges also embrace this philosophy.
Right.
I think so too.
And they're not going to do it.
Colleges should say to the young people coming to them, what can we do for you?
Mm-hmm.
Not saying to the children, what level are you? Are we going to take you, or are you not good material for you?
Yeah, and all that testing that goes, that betters a test, doesn't really.
What Mrs. Johnson was setting up here, this organic school, was an ideal, and it could articulate with the real world, but it's certainly not in an ideal world. And when I went to college, I don't know, probably the independence that you get from organic school, but I saw college largely as a whole huge industry of semi-competent people perpetuating their own jobs. And so when I would go into, the hardest thing was, in other words, concepts are enclosed in books, but the writer of those books has made it as difficult as possible to understand what they're saying. And then the teachers make it even more difficult. Rather than trying to translate it to the simplest terms, what I did when I was teaching in college, I would say, this is easy. Look, boom, 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 this is what we're doing. Whereas I would find, like so many of my teachers would say, okay, I have a PhD. That means everyone thinks I'm intelligent. All right, now here I've got some brilliant students in every class of 30 people. There might be 5 people more intelligent than me. That's the last thing I want them to figure out. So I will make this subject seem as obtuse as possible, so that they say, oh, isn't he brilliant? He knows all that stuff.
And they don't make it clear to you. In other words,
they don't want it
it's
to
the
be
opposite
clear
of
to you.
teaching. It's the opposite of educating and leading you into the light.
This is why I think you had trouble with the test, not the subject.
No. And,
he's trying to make you miss.
Well,
guess what?
and I would miss on purpose just to be defiant.
No.
But I had those kind of teachers are not only in college, and that's the kind of teachers that were in the public school system too. It's like, we are the authority, and you are going to have to bend to our will. Now, organic teachers would never, no matter, by the time I came, a lot of the teachers were retired public school teachers from other places, and they just barely understood the concept of that all. So it was beginning to fade out. But the few that did get it or were really trying knew that it was their job to impart this to the whole class. And if it took a little longer with one class or with one student, you spent that time.
See, during Marietta Johnson's life, there was the teacher's training, which was 2 years. And you didn't teach in the school unless you took the 2 years of teacher's training. So you studied all of those, the John Deweys, the Pestalozzi, and Oppenheim, etc. So you were pretty steeped in it, even if you'd come from Harvard or whatever. Our folk dancing teacher, Charles Rabel, came from Harvard. Heard Mrs. Johnson lecture one time in New York and said, I've got to go join the school. And he was with us until his death in a plane crash, 6 years later. So we had in her day magnificent